So we are now in the midst of Halloween season, and I talked last video about uh, Halloween and horror movies, and there's an interesting topic that came up through talking with Yvonne about, as a parent, how do you do this? Now, my son's 16, my daughter's 20 years old. So then I asked myself the question, how did I do it? There's a strange societal thing that happens. Um, if you watch Halloween with your kids, the most uncomfortable scene will be the one where the girl's boobs are on screen. In all likelihood, anyways. There's a strange thing in society where anybody being naked is considered horrible and censor that immediately. But beheadings, gore, that's fine. Tonight's the beginning of the new season of The Walking Dead, and am I watching it? I don't really care. Who does Negan kill? I don't care is the answer. That show lost me a while ago, actually. I'll watch every other episode, maybe. But in general, I don't care. But I do find it weird that gore is okay, but nudity is considered bad. And that's certainly the case when it comes to movies. I came up with a few here that if you're a parent and you got kids and you're saying, well, I'd like to watch something on Halloween, again, by today's standards, this is nothing. I intend to watch this with my girlfriend this week at some point, and show her that by today's standards, by horror movie standards, this is a very good movie, which doesn't have a lot of gore in it. It really doesn't. It has very, 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 very little. And there's no beheadings or any nastiness. It's just things happen. A lot of it happens off screen. So a lot of it suggested, for instance, the dog is off screen, kind of. Yeah. This is a fantastic movie in that Betty White cursing and swearing in it is amazing. That's why I own it. The giant alligator swallowing a cow is fantastic. And sets up the line, he just ate a cow, stupid. It's amazing. I've never watched the sequels because it doesn't need a sequel. The original, now if you're into the Japanese, then Ringu is the one to watch. But for me, I'll take the American version. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying the first time you watch it. I remember I literally backed away from the screen when the big moment happens near the end. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, although I can't imagine anybody wanting to watch it who hasn't seen it. But I backed away from the TV and swore the whole time. Like, no, 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 because I didn't figure out what was going to happen, because I was so engrossed in what was happening in the movie. And there were so many moments in the movie that I thought were really well done, which is why Ring 2 was somewhat of a disappointment. They tried to take it in a different direction. I have Ring 2 as well. I have Ring 2 because it was different. They tried to update the idea and develop it. And now there's Rings, which is some sequel that seems to think that pluralizing the Ring experience and making it happen to everybody is going to make it scarier. I don't know. And then there's the scene on the plane where I go, that's not how it works. So, and that's just me. But anyways, if you can handle gore, and your children can handle gore, but you want to make it funny, I don't have a copy of Shaun of the Dead to show right now, but this is almost as good as Shaun of the Dead. It's a movie that says, okay, let's take zombies and put them in 1950s America and see how that works. And it's really fantastic. It works really, really well. And even though Billy Connolly doesn't technically have a line, he brings so much character to Fido, the pet zombie. Just for the term Fido the pet zombie, it's worth watching. It is fantastic. And of course, I've talked about this before, but for youngins, these are not as intense. Especially Army of Darkness, in terms of where it stands with the other Ash and the Evil Dead movies, or the Ash versus Evil Dead series, it's not as bad in terms of gore and everything. So then the other thought that I had too, and Halloween brings up these thoughts, is what makes a good horror movie to me? Because I was talking to friends of mine at work yesterday, and I started to say what kind of horror movies I can't stand, and the next thing they did was talk about all of their favorite horror movies, and they were the kind I can't stand. So I walked away from the conversation, not because I don't like them or because I think their tastes are shit. That's where it's different. My tastes are different from somebody else's. It doesn't mean their tastes are wrong, and I'm not going to tell you, well, your horror movies aren't real horror movies, because no. So the concept then becomes, well, okay, Shannon, what do you consider to be a good horror movie? You've watched them for, almost your entire life. I remember being traumatized as a kid by War of the Worlds, the old 60s, 50s version. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the one with Donald Sutherland. Oh, God, it still terrifies me. I'm still scared of that one. The original Alien, when it came out. Kitty, stop. What else? The Thing, the John Carpenter version, The Thing. Oh my God, that still is terrifying. So, what do I like in a horror movie? I don't like jump scares. And what I mean is, and this is the Paranormal Activity thing, is nothing happens, you're watching a security camera, and then there's a loud noise, and everybody jumps. That's not a horror movie. That is no different than the crap that used to go around the internet, which was stare at this picture, and you stare at a picture, and then all of a sudden, Reagan's face from The Exorcist is right there, and there's a scream in, so that you jump. That's not a horror movie. It's not. And they've tried to make horror movies out of that Reagan face. To me, it's not entertaining. I'm bored. And the other problem I have is, somebody mentioned Oculus, and if I had this channel when I watched Oculus, I would have reviewed it. My problem with Oculus was I saw the ending coming at the start. So if at the start of your movie, I know exactly where it's going to end, and I know it's trying to be clever, I'm not going to watch it. Now, in Friday the 13th movies, I know where they're going to end. I can't wait to get there and see who lives to get there. I can usually tell pretty early who's going to live, though, because there's rules, and you got to follow the rules. But there's a lot of people who don't like Friday the 13th movies. I enjoy, there's gore. The gore is usually not too over the top, especially in the old ones, because the MPAA really came down on them. You look at the gore that the MPAA made them cut out in Friday the 13th movies, and you compare that with stuff that Hostel has got away with, or Saw movies get away with, and it's really egregious. Like, it is minor things. Even Scream, the original Scream, which is a very good movie, the things that they had to edit out, like, I would recommend watching Scream on DVD or Blu-ray with Wes Craven, his commentary, because he talks about the stuff they had to edit out to get an R rating from the MPA, and it doesn't make any sense. They're so into the whole minutia of the thing. It's like, okay, so we cut his intestines out. All right, but you can't see the intestines moving out of his body for more than, I think it was like a second. It was something silly. I'm like, wait, what? Like, who sits there and goes, well, his intestines are out, but they're not moving, so it's okay. What? No, that's... It's one of those things that just drives me nuts. So I'm not an MPAA fan at all. I don't pay any attention. It's like I said in the last video, I talked about Dawn of the Dead, and it gets an X rating. Do I think it deserves an X rating? No. The Feeding Frenzy in Dawn of the Dead from 1978, by today's standards, is tame. And the blood is the wrong color in Dawn of the Dead, the old one. So there's scenes that make you wince. You go, oh, man, that's nasty. But at the same time, you go, man, that blood's the wrong color. And it kind of takes you out of the movie. So special effects are not big to me, but if it has CGI, it takes me out. So again, it comes to the modern horror movies. You have jump scares, you have CGI faces. The CGI demon face, the first time I saw it in the original Paranormal Activity, scared the hell out of me. Now it's like, oh, it's CGI demon face. Really? Found footage movies do nothing for me anymore. I'm done. I'm done. The original Blair Witch was watchable once. You can't watch it again. It's not a rewatchable movie. The first Paranormal Activity was watchable once, and after that, it's just not much there for found footage. Not in the horror genre. There are other found footage movies and other, like, I don't consider Cloverfield to be found footage horror. It's science fiction. And Cloverfield is a good movie. I know there's people who hate it, but I enjoyed Cloverfield for what it was. Um, but yeah, a good horror movie, it's got to have some kind of rules within its universe. So Nightmare on Elm Street's got the dreams have certain rules. They change. Phantasm, there's certain rules in terms of how the tall man works, where he's working, and what's going on around him. Hellraiser has rules to it. No, what else? I'm trying to think of other universes. Child's Play doesn't really have a universe. It's too stupid. I hate the Child's Play movies. I'm sorry, I've tried. I've even tried lately, and I can't get into it. If you qualify Gremlins as horror, Gremlins has its own too. But Gremlins, they both take place around Christmas, so I qualify them as Christmas movies, which is weird, but I qualify, especially the original Gremlins with the snow and the Christmas lights and the Gremlins singing Christmas carols in the one part, and watching Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. To me, it's a total Christmas movie, and it's a fantastic Christmas movie. I love it. With a horror movie, a sense of humor is good if it has that. I don't go for the torture movies so much. I mean, I enjoyed Saw 2 and 3 for what they were. I think 2 and 3 were fantastic movies, and everything after that went off the rails. I don't like the Rob Zombie style horror movies. The ones that just like Devil's Rejects, and I'm gonna make people mad here. I think Devil's Rejects is garbage, and I think it's hot garbage. I a little disturbed by people that like that in House of a Thousand Corpses. They don't do anything for me. I don't enjoy them. And now they came out with a remake sequel for Texas Chainsaw. I think it was 2 years ago that I really enjoyed. I was really surprised. I really enjoyed it. Texas Chainsaw movies can be really good or really bad. The original, I hated the original. And again, that's going to cause people to go, or whatever. He doesn't even like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. No, I got bored. I was bored 90% of that movie. Just bored to death. And then Texas Chainsaw 2 with Dennis Hopper is just garbage. Anything that came after that's terrible. The reboot with Jessica Biel was watchable because Jessica Biel's in tight jeans and a half shirt, but it's disturbing because Jessica Biel looks extremely hot, and it's a really disturbingly gory movie, so those two things don't go well together. And then they kind of did that again with Chainsaw the Beginning with Jordana Brewster, although that one put me off because I'm like, okay, so this is a prequel to the other one, so everybody's dead. That's what did it. I'm like, okay, so I'm watching a movie where I already know before it starts that everybody dies. Glorious. And you get that feeling watching zombie movies 90% of the time, like, okay, all of these people are going to become meat at some point, but it's different than when you're watching a serial killer movie, because it's like part of what makes a serial killer movie work is you should be cheering for one side or the other. Not everybody cheers for the victims in Friday the 13th movies. Some people cheer for Jason. And there are times where I cheer for the way Jason is very creative with what he does. But in general, I need to root for one side or the other. And with Chainsaw movies, I usually don't root for either side. It's just, it's hard to get through some of them. I find the movies that the director's trying to just push further and further, like Wolf Creek apparently has a series now. Wolf Creek, I know there's a lot of people who like it, the Aussie Outback and the serial killer. I hated it. I absolutely detested almost every minute of Wolf Creek. The sequel, I enjoyed. but the sequel lost its courage right towards the end because they made it so the protagonist has actually outwitted the serial killer. And I thought, now if he gets away, you can set up an amazing sequel where the serial killer's after this kid that got away from him. This kid outsmarted him, and then it lost its courage, and the kid did something really stupid, and then the serial killer catches up and game over. And I was like, oh, well, that's too bad. So courage is big. I know with the Elm Street movies, there's the heroines that survive. There's Nancy, there's Alice, Kristen in the third movie. I like the ones that survive for later. In Friday the 13th, the girls that survive, and it's almost always girls. That's why I laugh when people say, oh, these movies are really terrible to women and they're sexist. Not if you watch them. Usually the survivors are women. They're usually virginal women who don't use drugs and they don't drink and they're good girls, but they're still women. So, you know, puritanical use aside, and that's another thing too. If you're religious and you want to teach your kids that sin is bad, then anybody who has sex in a horror movie usually dies. Anybody who uses drugs in a horror movie usually dies. If you get drunk in a horror movie, you usually die. These movies are good moral tales. So maybe your kid won't listen to a story about Job or Sodom and Gomorrah or all that. They're like, oh, that's ancient. Show them Jason Voorhees. Don't tell them that it's not a true story. Just, yeah, there is a Camp Crystal Lake. It's in Jersey, but, you know, the guy can walk and he's kind of unkillable. So, but if you're not having sex or doing drugs, he'll probably leave you alone. People could be swayed. Just saying. And the sin factor plays a role in the Elm Street movies as well. It plays a role in almost all of them. I mean, Hellraiser. You know, whoever's playing with the box, they're dead. Don't play with a box from hell. That's a good moral tale. The Hellraiser movies though can be tough to get through. I enjoyed the second one. I hated the first movie. That's a funny thing with Hellraiser. I hated the first movie. I found it was too dark, too slow, I didn't like anybody in those movies. I really liked the heroine in the second movie, and the third movie I thought was fantastic. I really enjoyed the third movie from start to finish. Part of where the second movie lost me is that you had a villain that seemed like he was too overpowered. It was like they were setting up this battle between one side of hell and the other, and he was so overpowered, and I was like, this is lame. Why? But still, I enjoyed the second one more than the first, because the first was just terrible. I don't know if I'm going to have to turn in my horror movie fan card at the end of this or not. Probably. But as a parent, I started allowing my kids to watch the PG horror movies early on, and they could watch Halloween when it was on AMC when they were 10, 11 years old, because there's nothing in them for the most part. It's just all the music, and the environment, the mood being set, and in general, they're fun. You feel bad for some of the characters that pass on. Certainly, you don't feel totally bad for others, but it's not a huge body count. It's creepy, sure. Michael Myers is fantastically creepy in that movie, and I don't think he ever achieved that level of creepiness again, because he couldn't. You can only get lightning in a bottle once, and then after that, it's just gone. But yeah, it's funny because at this time of year, it's like it's more acceptable to watch horror movies. But the horror movies that come out now, I can't stand them. Jump scares are not horror. Horror should make you kind of wince a little bit, and you're like, "Oh, it's coming! It's coming," which is kind of a jump scare, but it isn't, because part of a jump scare is that it's a fake out. It's, something jumped at the screen. But it's not what you think it is, so it's okay. Everybody's fine, but we're scared. In a horror movie, you'll have the common jump scares, the cat. So somebody's in a dark room, and then, cat jumps out of the car. Damn cat. And then they turn around and machete in the face. I like that. because there's a payoff immediately after the kind of cheap scare. And sometimes there isn't a payoff right after that scare. So it's kind of fun to watch that. And like I said, machete in the face. Part of what I enjoy with the Friday the 13th, even Elm Street to some extent, and all these movies, there's no torturing people. There's no, like, I don't understand why people like the Hostel movies. I hate them. The only Hostel movie I liked was the third one, which I think was direct to video, and nobody liked except me, because they actually tried to tell a story with it, and they tried to talk about how this fake society, dark society existed, and what they were in it for, and what was going on, and they actually turned the tables, fully turned the tables in that movie, unlike the first and second, which play with the idea of turning the tables, but then they don't. And it was interesting. The third one was really, really interesting. And the third one I found demonized Eastern Europe less than the first two. I don't understand why Eastern Europe is a villain now, other than because you have to have a nameless villain in a movie, I guess. Let's see, what kind of society can we have? Well, maybe they go to Czech. Well, why would you go to the Czech Republic? Why? Maybe Romania. Well, why? Like, just because it's unknown doesn't mean it's a villain, does it? I mean, if the Hostel movies were set that they went to a bed and breakfast in the U.S., it could be just scarier. Honestly, I think it could be done right. The Purge movies, I didn't mind the first. I enjoyed the second one more than the first, and I'm really kind of looking forward to election year. I haven't watched it yet, but it seems like the movies are getting better, which is unusual, but in the horror genre that can happen. I don't know if this is explained which horror movies I like or not, but yeah, if it's full of jump scares, I will not enjoy it. If it's one of these smart horror movies that's all dialogue and found footage and what's the mystery? I figured out the mystery before the movie started. Like, I'm done. I'm done. Because I know M. Night Shyamalan and Sixth Sense has kind of ruined movies in that everybody looks for a twist. So at the start of a movie like that, like Oculus, where it's like, there's going to be a twist. I knew there was going to be a twist right at the start, and I'm like, oh, I know what's going to happen. And immediately, I tuned out. I was done. Because I knew what was coming, and I couldn't get into it. Just couldn't do it. Anyways, I'd like to hear anybody else's feelings on that. And for the record, even as my kids got older, I mean, I let them watch Freddy vs. Jason. I made sure I watched with them. I would recommend the first time that, you know, if your kids have never watched a horror movie at a friend's house or anything, the first time they watch a movie, watch it with them, because, you know, it takes some of that fear out of it for them, potential fear, and then if they have any questions, they can ask, and questions could come up. You know, are intestines really like that? No. Can a zombie really bite through flesh like that? No. Human teeth cannot do what zombie teeth do in horror movies. And the more you think about zombie feeding frenzies, the more unrealistic and joke-worthy they really truly are. So anyways, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're on your way through. I consider this almost like part of a horror series, because it's Halloween, so I can sort of come out of the proverbial horror closet. I said horror, not whore, so just to keep that on the up and up. But it's the one time of year where I can admit, yeah, I like to be scared. I like to be kind of grossed out. I like to be challenged. And movies that do that or TV shows that do that, I'm big on. The first season of American Horror Story, I loved it. Every other season since then has been garbage. And just awful. I can't do it. I got halfway through the second season and then just done. And it's been ever since then. At the start of every season, I've been like, I'm done. I can't do this. So, you know, that's just me. I have very, very set tastes when it comes to horror stuff. So let me know in the comments. And for people who are gonna, you know, it was mentioned in the last video that, you know, the PG ones, the Casper, Dark Shadows, and all that. I have a lot of those too. I enjoy those things. I enjoyed Beetlejuice when I was a kid. I enjoy it less now because it got played to death on television. Um, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory I consider to be kind of really dark. Willy Wonka, I think, was closer to the spirit of the book. Charlie was closer to the look of the book because you were able to put together the practical sets that Willy Wonka really wasn't able to, which is too bad because if you put Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka into the Johnny Depp version of the movie and you have the Willy Wonka played by Gene Wilder in there instead of the Johnny Depp version with the modern special effects, you would have a fantastic movie that would go down in history. Like, we're talking Wizard of Oz level love for that movie. But because you had Johnny Depp, who was doing his Michael Jackson impersonation throughout the whole movie, it doesn't hold up under repeated viewings. But I did like Dark Shadows. Again, Johnny Depp's just so weird, though. I have to wonder sometimes with these movies where he gets too weird. I think, if you took Johnny Depp out of this movie, would it be more watchable? And the answer is usually yes, which is really too bad. I think Johnny Depp, for me, my favorite Johnny Depp movie is Donnie Brasco, which is not horror at all. But he was cool in that movie. And there are times where when he's not being a character, and I find he's one note when he's a character, I can't watch it anymore. I try. I just can't. It's like he's become a caricature of himself. And it is too bad. Anyways, I look forward to reading the comments and reading about why I'm wrong. Go ahead and tell me about what you watch on Halloween. It could be Batman. Any Tim Burton movie qualifies as Halloween. Nightmare Before Christmas is fantastic. So yeah, it's not all gore-rated movies, but it's jump scares. I don't do jump scares. I just don't. I don't enjoy them. I never did. But again, I never liked those things online. Stare at the screen long enough, and something will happen, and then some demon face shows up. So after a while, it became, look at the screen long enough, and I go, nah, screw you. People are like, no, seriously, click it. No, that's not horror. That's just making me jump. That's not horror. Nightmare on Elm Street never had that moment. It had, oh my god, when Freddy's arms get really long, which looks cartoonish, but it's a horror. It's a nightmare. And Freddy's arms get really long, and he scrapes his nails along the wall. Like, it is creepy. You didn't need a jump scare. If you have an effective horror movie, you don't need a jump scare. Okay, I'm done for today. Thank you for watching. As I said before, click like and subscribe, and I will talk to y'all again really soon.